Hello and welcome to another online class of Cambridge Exam Prep. This is teacher Rekha, and in this class I'm going to give you detailed information about reading part 5 and part 6. You are going to learn what the task looks like, the biggest problems, as well as tips and strategies to help you feel more confident and get high marks. So without any further delay, let's get started. In this part, there is a shorter text with 6 gaps. For each gap, you can choose from 4 options A to D. Reading part 5 mainly tests your vocabulary but also some grammar. Here you can see an example text. It is not very long with only around 150 words. There are also 6 numbered gaps. You have to put one word in each of those gaps. The possible answers look like this. There are always 4 options A, B, C, D for you to choose from. So, what is difficult about part 5? In reading part 5, there are some common problems that we have seen many times with students. First, I'm going to show you what these problems are, and after that, we are going to look at the best solutions. Timing is very important. When you take the P1 preliminary test, you need to be aware of the strict time limit. In the reading paper, you only get 45 minutes to finish all 6 tasks. In some of the parts, you have to read pretty long texts or you have to think about filling in gaps, like in part 5. Apart from that, you must also transfer your answers onto a separate answer sheet, which normally takes around 5 minutes. As a result, you only have 40 minutes to answer all the questions, or 6.5 minutes for each part. Make sure that you always check your timing during the exam and don't use too much time for one single task. The second difficult part is don't get confused by all the possible answers. Another very common problem is that many students get a little bit nervous because of the many different answer options. For each gap in part 5, there are 4 possible answers and they are usually similar in meaning, so it can become confusing very quickly. It is important for you to understand exactly how the task works and what you can do in order to stay focused and relaxed. Following a step-by-step process. This tip is probably the most important one for every single part of the B1 preliminary test. Always make sure that you know exactly what you have to do and create a plan that helps you when you get nervous or if you are running out of time. This way you can stay calm when everything becomes more stressful. The step-by-step plan for reading part 5 might look like this. Read the text quickly. Analyze the gaps. Choose the correct answer. And then read the text again. Following a plan like this one can give you extra confidence. But let's have a look at it in more detail. Reading the text quickly, which is the first step, is not a must, but I definitely recommend reading the text quickly to get a general understanding. Students often forget about the whole text and focus too much on individual gaps. Get a first idea and then move on to the meaty part of the task. Analyze the gaps is possibly the most important step of the whole process. After you have read the text quickly, it is now time to look at the gaps. Remember that part 5 mainly tests your vocabulary, so you need to find out what possible expressions we can create with the words that are in front of and after the gaps. Here is an example. Next is Choose the correct answer. So, before the gap, the sentence mentions that coconut trees grow close to the ocean and that there is something hot and wet. There is a lot of ocean in the world, so we are talking about something global and not just local. These are the possible answers. It is always a good idea to eliminate one or two options that just don't work. For example, temperature is impossible because it can't be wet. Weather is also not possible because we can never say a weather in English as weather is an uncountable noun. That leaves us with condition or climate. The word we would use to describe the typical weather in an area is climate. So, that is the correct answer. Let's do another example to make sure that everything is clear. For question 22, we see that a verb is missing, and the important thing here is that there is no preposition in the text. The only verb out of the four possible answers that we use without a preposition is reach. Go and travel need the preposition to. We can sometimes use go without a preposition, but only in very specific cases. And arrive is used with at. He arrived at school 5 minutes late. Or in. It was raining when he arrived in France. So this leaves us with only with only one option, which is reach. Once you finish with all the gaps, it is always a good idea to read the text one more time. We often focus too much on the details around each gap that we sometimes forget about the meaning of the whole text. Reading everything one last time can help you find mistakes that looked correct when you were concentrating on the gap. But in the full context of the topic, you might realize that you need to choose a different option. So that was all for part 5. Now we moved on to part 6, which is the last part of the reading task. In this part, you read a short text with 6 gaps. You have to put exactly one word in each gap. Part 6 mainly tests your knowledge of grammar. And the grammar parts that includes part 6 are prepositions, verb forms, etc. But also some vocabulary like phrasal verbs and fixed phrases or collocations. So it is not a true reading task, like for example, other parts from part 1 to 4. This is what reading part 6 typically looks like. You can see that the text you have to read is not terribly long, around like 100 to 150 words, right? It's not that much lengthy. It looks very similar to part 5, but there are no possible answers to choose from in this task. You need to decide by yourself what the missing words are. Again, following the step-by-step process is something that I recommend for every part of the exam, and reading part 6 is no exception. You can follow this strategy whenever you do this task, and it can help you save time and feel calm as you stay focused, even if you're running low on time towards the end of the paper. In part 6, a step-by-step plan might look like this. Read the text quickly. Analyze the gaps. Fill in the gaps and then read the text again. With all of this in mind, let's check an example. Read the text quickly. Most students jump straight into filling in the gaps and they are surprised when they make a lot of mistakes. One thing that can definitely help you is to read the text quickly before you do anything else. Understanding the general idea of the text, the topic, and some of the details can be very helpful when you try to choose the correct words. However, if you feel very confident with your reading and you know that you can understand a text in English easily, you don't have to do the reading first. It is your decision, which depends on how you feel, your timing, and many other things. Analyze the gap or fill in the gaps. So, first you need to analyze the gaps, and then later on, you have to fill in the gaps. The next step, which is analyzing the gaps, should always be to look at the gaps and the information you can find before and after each gap. This will give you useful clues so you are able to decide what word is missing in each space. Focus on the grammatical structures. For example, articles, verb forms, nouns, and prepositions. They often tell you what type of word you need to add to make the sentence grammatically correct and meaningful. In the example provided that you can see on the screen right now, I have underlined a few words that can be helpful. You can see that there is a verb in present perfect. I have visited, as well as the noun time. This should tell you that you need to say how often the writer has visited the museum. Of course, there are many ways to express how often something has happened, but in this specific example, there are only two words that we can use: every and each. Remember, you can write only one word in the gap. So, other phrases like the one time I have visited are not possible. Okay, so let's check another example from that same text. For gap 32, the most important word is own. You will probably want something to eat while you are there. You can take dash own picnic and eat in the museum garden or try one of the two museum cafes. So in this, the most important word is own. If you use own plus noun, which is own picnic, you usually use a possessive adjectives. For example, my, your, his, her, our, their, with this expression. And because the subject of the sentence is you, we need to put your in this gap. As you can see, you need to analyze the gaps very carefully to find the grammatical structures or specific expressions that can help you find the missing words. But with practice, this becomes easier and easier. Then read the text again. Once you finish the task, it is a good idea to read the text one last time. It can happen very easily that you focus so much on the gaps that you forget about the bigger picture. And when you read everything again, you might find a couple of mistakes because it doesn't sound correct in context. This way, you can still make last changes and possibly get another mark or two. So this was all for the last two parts of the reading, which is part 5 and part 6. Hope everything is clear by now. If you have any queries, feel free to ask anytime and do not forget to do your assignment online. See you all in the next class. Till then, take care and bye-bye.